Studying the Quran has been an incredible eye-opener. What I found most disturbing, considering that it's supposed to have been a divine revelation, are the astounding number of grammatical, historical, linguistic, theological, and biblical errors that fill its pages. How can any thinking human being accept so many inconsistencies, discrepancies, and outright falsehoods as having been revealed to Muhammad by the angel Gabriel?
The Quran and Hadith have been studied in minute details, both by the followers of Muhammad and by Orientalists over the centuries. In the latter 200 years, many very eminent Europeans studied the Arabic language, the Quran and Ahadith, and mastered both to an incredible degree. It is on record that the Muhammadan exegetes as well as the European Arabists have come to the following conclusions. 1. That the Quran contains a great number of grammatical and lexical errors. 2. It contains a significant number of words, in fact the most important ones in the Quran, about 108 of them, which are entirely foreign to the Arabic language. Most are based on and or borrowed from the Syriac, Hebrew, Aramaic, Ethiopic, Persian, and others. 3. It contains a number of names of biblical characters not congruent with those in the Bible. 4. It contains an enormous number of historical and theological errors. 5. It also contains a significant number of differences and contradictions as compared with the same stories as originally written in the Hebrew Bible or the New Testament. 6. It has copied almost the entire pagan Arabian traditions and fetishes, but cloaks them with the wrappings of Islam with only a minute number of changes. 7. It contains major historical displacements that are completely at odds with the written records and knowledge. Based upon all the above contradictions, inconsistencies, and displacements in time and space, Allah cannot be the God of the Bible, the God of Israel, or the God of Jesus. God, by definition, is omniscient, as the Quran asserts to be all-knowing, and would not have given two or more different versions of the same events dislocated in time, in space, and in names of characters. This attribute is by itself an enormous blasphemy. The following are only a few of these manifest errors and contradictions from among hundreds upon hundreds of others. The story of Cain and Abel. After Cain killed his brother Abel, the Quran says, Surah Al-Ma'idah 5.31, Allah sent a raven who scratched the ground to show him how to hide the shame of his brother. The story of Noah and the flood. The Quran in Surah Hud 11.42 says that one of the sons of Noah refused to go into the ark and was drowned in the flood. The Bible says that all three sons of Noah went into the ark with him and were saved from the flood. Genesis 7.7. In Al-Hud 11.44, the Quran says that the ark came to rest on top of Mount Judi. The Bible says that it was Mount Ararat. Genesis 8.4. The story of Abraham. Abraham's father, according to the Quran, is Azar, Surah Al-An'am 6.74, while the Bible says that his name is Terah, Genesis 11.26. The Quran says Abraham had two sons. The Bible says they were 8, Genesis 25.2. The Quran says some of Abraham's descendants lived in the valley of Mecca, Surah Ibrahim 14.37, while the Bible says they lived in Hebron, Genesis 13.18. The Quran says that Abraham had two wives. In the Bible, he had 3. The Quran says that he built the Kaaba, Surah Al-Baqarah 2.125. The Bible has no such record. The Hadith assert that it was Ishmael who was being sacrificed, while the Bible tells us it was Isaac. The story of Moses. The Quran states that the one who adopted Moses was Pharaoh's wife, Surah Al-Qasas 28.9. While the Bible says it was Pharaoh's daughter, Exodus 2.5. The Quran states that Haman lived in Egypt during Moses' time of 1450 BC, while the Bible asserts that Haman lived in Persia during Xerxes' time of 400 BC. Esther 3.1. The story of Mary and Jesus. The Quran states that Mary's brother was Aaron, Surah Maryam 19.28, while the Bible says that Aaron lived 1450 years before Mary, Numbers 26.59. The Quran asserts that she gave birth to Jesus under a palm tree, 19.23, while the Gospel says it was in a stable, Luke 2.7. The Quran also mentions that Jesus spoke and made miracles at the time when he was young, 19.24. The New Testament has no such record. The Quran asserts that Jesus did not die on the cross, Surah An-Nisa 4.157, but the Gospels disagree. Astronomical, Surah Al-Kahf 18.86. Until when he reached the setting of the sun, he found it set in a spring of murky water. Near it he found a people. We said, O Dhul Qarnayn, either to punish them or to treat them with kindness. According to the Quran, the sun sets in a murky puddle of water, but the sun is over 1 million times bigger than the size of the earth. Historical, Surah Al-Qasas 28.38. Pharaoh built the Tower of Babel in Egypt. According to the historical record, the Tower of Babel was built in what is now Iraq and not in Egypt. Alexander the Great, Surah Al-Kahf 18.83. They ask thee concerning Dhul Qarnayn, Alexander the Great, say, I will rehearse to you something of his story. Verily, we establish his power on earth, and we give him the ways and the means to all ends. Alexander was a pagan and had absolutely nothing to do with prophethood except in the Quranic version. That Zacharias could not speak for 3 nights, Surah Maryam 19.1, while the New Testament says he could not speak until the child was born or for about 9 months, Luke 1.20. So far, ladies and gentlemen, not a single verse above has any resemblance to any original one in the Hebrew Bible or the New Testament, and hence cannot possibly have been a revelation from either the angel Gabriel or the God of Israel and Jesus. But it could easily have been from Satan, pretending to be the angel Gabriel. After all, he, Satan, was able to deceive Muhammad with the notorious but astounding satanic verses, when Muhammad was more than willing to compromise his newly found monotheism by reverting to paganism. The followers of Muhammad, who believe the Quranic version of the biblical events, have not read, let alone studied either the Bible or the New Testament, to compare and contrast these events, since they are actually prohibited from doing so by their political and religious leaders. Even when and if some of them do attain such knowledge, they are then told that both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament have been perverted over the centuries by the followers of Moses and Jesus, and hence are not the original versions that would have otherwise agreed with the Quran. There is obviously not a single follower of Muhammad on earth who can produce the original versions of these books upon which they rest their case. Hence, it would take a monumental intellectual and spiritual effort for any follower of Muhammad to use his or her own logic to overcome decades of indoctrination and accept the reality that it is the Quran and only the Quran that is in total and manifest error and falsehood.